Well, good evening. We got the thumbs up from the tech guy, so we're live. Let's start with a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful for this day. And again, thankful for a warm place we can meet together. We're thankful for your word and the beauty of your word, the glory of your word, the encouragement of your word. Pray as we meet together tonight that you would challenge us from your word as well, and that we would not just be in it as we come to church, but that we would be in it each and every day to learn and to grow and to get your message for us each day as we live our lives. We do pray that you bless in this service, that we would honor you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we're going to start with hymn number 289. There will be showers of blessing. Of course, the only showers we've had lately have been snow showers, and it looks like we'll have some more of those. This is what I call nuisance snow. It's not enough to really shovel or plow or snow blow, but it just keeps falling down so that you keep having it on your surfaces. And it's still pretty and all, but it's a nuisance. Shovel my way across in the morning. I go run on the treadmill. I come down and there's enough to shovel to go home. And I'm like, hey, that's not fair. But showers of blessing. Showers of blessing coming from Ezekiel. Tells us that was Ezekiel 34. Anyone knows what comes shortly after Ezekiel 34? The fun part of Ezekiel? Valley of the dry bones. Prophesied there would be showers of blessing. And then Ezekiel 38, God said, Son of man, prophesy to these dry bones, and he would bring up flesh. Isaiah was prophesied, the major prophets, Isaiah was prophesied to Judah before they were carried off into captivity. Jeremiah was prophesied to Judah as people were being carried away. And Ezekiel was prophesied to the captives about the return and about the millennial kingdom. So that's the three major prophets. And then the minor prophets, they're all over the map. But Ezekiel is the one that deals a lot with the millennium, God making all things right, and God bringing life where there was death, where there was apathy towards him, bringing life. Well, we're in 2 Chronicles chapter 8 and 9. Say, what's the big deal about Ezekiel if we're in 2 Chronicles? Like, if you look at your Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles. Then we have Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalm, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel. 2nd Chronicles is way before Ezekiel. But is the Bible written chronologically? No. In fact, 1st, 2nd Chronicles comes before Ezra, but it was written by Ezra. And it's the story of the kings of Judah. And as we get to 2nd Chronicles 8 and 9, we're dealing with the story of Solomon and Solomon's life and his reign and the glories of his reign. But remember, this is being written by Ezra, who ministered around the time of Ezekiel. Ezekiel was either slightly before Ezra or at the same time as Ezra. So he was prophesying about the return of the glory of the kingdom. And Ezra's writing about the glory of the kingdom that was, reminding God's people that the blessings that God had promised to Judah, Israel and Judah, the blessings he promised through the Davidic line, the blessings that Solomon enjoyed, and we can see in the book of 2nd Chronicles, are blessings that were still available. And that's our title tonight. God's blessings are available. Now, as we look at the blessings to Solomon, I don't think any of us are going to claim the promise, because there is no promise, that we can bring into our house 666 talents of gold a year. It's interesting, isn't it, that the amount of gold brought into Solomon's kingdom year by year, in the King James Bible, it says 600, 60. 60 is 60. 666 talents of gold. And I find it interesting that Ezra wrote that. The number of man, of course, is 666. And that's how much gold he brought in. But it's a picture of blessing here. And it's proof to me that the Bible does not care about numerology. That Ezra, as he wrote, did not say, I can't write 666. Years ago, I don't know that it probably happens very often anymore. It'd be funny when you go to McDonald's or something and you got your receipt and your food came to a total of $6.66. I don't think it happens as much anymore because things are more expensive than that. I mean, that's basically a large French fry at this point is almost $6.66. It's not quite that, but it's getting close. I don't know. How about at 50s, right? That burger's under $6. If you get a plain cheeseburger, if you get one of the good ones with anything on it, you're going to be past that 666. If the Bible cared about numerology, the study of numbers and what numbers mean, this would never have been included that Solomon brought in 666 talents of gold a year. The Bible does not care about numerology. There is things about numbers in the Bible, but God is very clear about that. There's no hidden messages in numbers in the Bible. If there was, this would be a really hard passage to figure out. But there aren't, so it's not that bad. God's blessings are available. And the reminder from Ezra to the people of Judah is that God's blessings were not just a thing of the past. The blessings that Solomon enjoyed are available for those that will walk with God and follow his commands. Now, again, we're not going to look at the blessings and say, all right, if I follow God, I'm going to get 666 talents of gold a year. I didn't do the math, but a talent's about 60 to 70 pounds. That's 40,000-ish pounds of gold, which makes it about 20 tons of gold a year. I don't think any of us are going to claim that promise and expect to get that. But we'll see when we get to that what that has to do with. Chapter 8 is going to tell us the things that Solomon was doing and some of the blessings that he saw. But chapter 9 is going to give us the two major blessings that Solomon received in his kingdom. What's interesting, or maybe interesting to note as we look at 2nd Chronicles, this is a summary of Solomon's reign. And it's going to mention the Queen of Sheba, his wisdom, and all of the money, gold, horses, chariots, trees. There's amalgam trees, and peacocks and things that were brought into his kingdom. And it's not going to mention all of his wives and concubines. And it's not going to mention that at the end of his life, his wives turned his heart away from God. It's not going to mention all of the other gods that Solomon served at the end. It's a very curated view of Solomon's reign that focuses on Solomon's heart for God and God's blessing of his kingdom. So as we get into it, 2 Chronicles 8, verse 1, came to pass at the end of 20 years, wherein the Solomon had built the house of the Lord and his own house, that the cities which Hiram had restored to Solomon, Solomon built them. Now, the cities were cities that Solomon gave to Hiram as part of his payment for all of the wood and stuff that was brought in by Hiram. And he did not like them. So Solomon took them back and made other arrangements to pay him. Those cities which he had restored to Solomon, Solomon built them and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And Solomon went to Hamath Zobah and prevailed against it. He built Tadmor in the wilderness and all the store cities which he built in Hamath. And he built Beth Horon, the upper, and Beth Horon, the nether, fenced cities with walls, gates, and bars, and Baalath, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and all the chariot cities, and the cities of the horsemen, and all that Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem and in Lebanon and throughout all the land of his dominion. And there's this building of God's kingdom that he's building up cities. He is expanding Jerusalem. He is building things up to make his kingdom run smoothly, but he is also expanding the kingdom. He takes a city. Now, remember, David couldn't build the house of the Lord because he was a man of blood, a man of war. Solomon has built the house of the Lord. And now he's got some battles going on as they take a city. He desired to build in Jerusalem and Lebanon, and he built. And we see this expanding of God's kingdom, expanding of the kingdom of Israel, of Judah. At this point, we're in the unified kingdom because Saul, David, Solomon reigned over the whole kingdom of Israel. It was only Solomon's son Rehoboam that lost the northern 10 tribes and to Jeroboam, son of Nebat. But the building of God's kingdom, there's the growth of God's control, and he's taking cities in the land, and he's building cities in the land. So, well, how come David didn't take these cities and build these cities? Israel was largest under King David. But here Solomon is taking some cities as well and kicking out some of the influence of the Amorites and the people of the land. And he's expanding the growth of God's control and God's influence. Now, does this mean we need to go take over cities? We need to go take over other churches. That's what it is. No, the picture of Israel is a picture of us allowing God's control in more of our life. What Solomon was doing was expanding his reign of where God was in control. And as we grow and we want to see God's blessings available, we need to expand God's control in our life. Now, we're dealing with the period of judges in FBI, and he was talking. It wasn't Judges, was the New Testament? What was he? I'm not telling you what he was talking about. He was talking about the when you get saved, you get rid of the big sins first. James? What? It was in New Testament in James. He goes, you get saved and you get rid of big sins, and then you leave some of the smaller sins because, you'll deal with those later, and they just kind of become like pets, and we keep them, and we don't ever deal with them, and we excuse ourselves by saying, well, that's just the way I am. I remember hearing that, and I thought, when I first heard someone say, well, that's just the way I am, I thought, well, Christian wouldn't actually say that. And then I heard someone telling me, like, well, you'll have to excuse them. That's just the way they are. Sinful? Well, there's a fix for that. God's got a fix for that. But the sins we leave become harder to get rid of as they dig into our lives. And Solomon here, there's been King Saul and King David, and now he's taking cities. Well, how easy is it to take those cities that have been left by the two kings before him? They become harder to take. You get used to them. And expanding God's control in our life, and the growth of the church opens the door for blessings to come. When we see those areas of sin in our life, we get used to them. When I worked at Pizza Hut, I went around with our district manager to other stores, and she goes, I love taking new people to other stores. Like, okay. She goes, when you walk in, I want you to make a note of everything wrong you see in the store. I'm like, well, why would there be things wrong in the stores? Don't they keep them up and keep them clean? And we walk in, and I'm like, how come they've got like 8 lights out? And these walls need repair back here in the kitchen, and this is off. And she goes, well, people that come into that every day, they get used to it. And so they don't notice what needs to be fixed. Same thing with areas of sin in our life. We don't notice it after a while. But as we get rid of those areas of sin, it opens the door for God's blessing. We see another thing is Solomon, it tells us in verse 7, as for all the people that were left of the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which were not of Israel. Again, we've got these people in the land that have not been dealt with, but of their children who were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel consumed not, them did Solomon make to pay tribute until this day. Now, this isn't necessarily a good thing. They were supposed to drive all of them out. In the days of Joshua, they didn't drive all of them out. In the days of the judges, they didn't drive all of them out. In the days of Saul, they didn't drive all of them out. In the days of David, they didn't drive all of them out. And in the days of Solomon, he's like, hey, we got all these extra people. Let's put them to tribute. But we're going to see that Solomon had a powerful army. There were more people giving and serving. Those are the people of the land. Verse 9 says, the children of Israel did Solomon make no servants for his work, but they were men of war and chief of his captains and captains of his chariots and horsemen. And these were the chief of King Solomon's officers, even 250 that bear rule over the people. God warned the people through Samuel that they shouldn't take a king, and if they took a king, he would take their sons to work in his army. He would take their daughters to work in cook food and prepare food in his house. They would take of the stuff that they had and the people that they had. And we get to Solomon, and that's what he does. But he has this powerful army. There's more people giving and serving. There's expansion of his control. Verse 17 tells us, then went Solomon to Ezion Geber and to Eloth and to the seaside by the land of Edom, and Huram sent by him by the hands of his servants ships and servants that had knowledge of the sea. And they went with the servants of Solomon to Ophir and took thence 450 talents of gold and brought them to King Solomon. There's an expansion of his strength and control with this powerful army. He's got more people giving and serving. He's got more people at his disposal to work. There's an expansion of God's control and power over that area and over the sea. So Israel didn't have much sea power under David. They didn't need it. They were conquering the land. They were getting rid of the Philistines. They were expanding the borders. But now under Solomon, they're expanding, and they've got a navy. They've got ships that are out to sea. But in the middle of this, we see what's kind of driving this for Solomon. Verse 11 says, and Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. This is the only mention we have of one of Solomon's wives. And we don't find about, she turns his heart away. But notice, it says, he built a house for her, for he said, my wife shall not dwell in the house of David, king of Israel, because the places are holy. You'll notice the places are in italics, which means the verse literally says, because holy whereunto the ark of the Lord hath come. The house of David was holy because the ark of the Lord had been there. And he says, I'm not bringing up the daughter of Pharaoh to a place where God's ark was. That's holy. Solomon had a respect for the holy. And so he built a house for the daughter of Pharaoh. Then Solomon, verse 12 says, offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch. even after a certain rate every day, according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths and the new moons and the solemn feasts, 3 times a year, even in the feast of unleavened bread and in the feast of weeks and in the feast of tabernacles. And he appointed, according to the order of David his father, the courses of the priests to their service and the Levites to their charges, to praise and to minister before the priests. That's a duty of every day required. The porters also by their courses at every gate, for so had David, the man of God, commanded. And they departed not from the commandments of the king unto the priests and Levites concerning any matter or concerning the treasurers. Now all the work of Solomon was prepared unto the day of the foundation of the house of the Lord until it was finished, so the house of the Lord was perfected. That Solomon had respect for the holy. He said, Moses commanded offerings, we're going to do them. My father David set up worship for the tabernacle, for the temple, and we're going to follow it. We're going to follow all that God has commanded through Moses and through David, and we're going to worship God the way he deserves to be worshiped. And there was a respect for the holy, a respect for God's presence, a respect for worship, and not just in the house of God, but in the house of God and in his kingdom, in his reign, in his administration as well. And there was a respect for God's commands. All that God says we're going to do. Now, all of those things set up the blessing. This tells us who Solomon was and why God blesses him. We get into chapter 9, we see the blessings that are available. Chapter 9, verse 1, and when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, she came to prove Solomon, or to test Solomon, with hard questions at Jerusalem, with a very great company, and camels that bear spices, and gold in abundance, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions, and there was nothing hid from Solomon which he told her not. And when the queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, his cupbearers also in their apparel, and his ascent by the way he went up into the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. The queen of Sheba hears about the wisdom of Solomon, and she imagines it can't possibly be like they're talking about. He can't be that wise. He can't be that smart. So she gathers all of the stumping questions she can find. Now, you'll find these people have these questions about the Bible, this to stump. Well, how can man have a free will if God is sovereign? Well, there are ways we can try to explain that, but the Bible teaches God is sovereign, and the Bible teaches we have free will, and they don't have to be conflicting. We can believe both of them, and that's fine. And people have these aha moments. Aha, I figured it out. Well, the Queen of Sheba came with all of her aha questions. I'm going to stump him. I'm going to give him these questions that are impossible to answer, that there's no good solutions for, that all of the best puzzles, she brought them all. But there's a great demonstration of wisdom in Solomon's reign. God made a promise to Solomon, ask me what I should give you. And Solomon says, I need a wise heart to rule this people. I need wisdom. And God gave Solomon wisdom. And here we have that. Wisdom to solve problems. Nothing was hid from Solomon that he told her not. Wisdom for wise living. The Queen of Sheba saw the way his house worked. And she said, wow, this is amazing. The sitting of his servants, the house that he had built, this is amazing. There was wisdom there. And wisdom for blessing. There was no more spirit in her, and she said to the king, verse 5, it was a true report that I heard in my country, in my own land, of thine acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit I believed not their words until I came, and my eyes had seen it. And behold, the one half of the greatness of thy wisdom was not told me, for thou exceedest the fame that I heard. She said, I couldn't believe what they told me about your wisdom, and now I came, and your wisdom is greater than they told me. Wisdom. And she says, verse 7, happy are thy men, and happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee and hear thy wisdom. Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighted in thee to set thee on his throne, and to be king for the Lord thy God, because thy God loved Israel to establish them forever. Therefore made he the king over them to do judgment and justice. Solomon had wisdom for blessing. The Queen of Sheba, when she came, she's like, your servants are blessed to be your servants. They are blessed to be in your court. They are blessed to be able to hear your wisdom. They are blessed to be able to live under your wisdom and in how you've got things arranged. And there are blessings in our lives that come from wisdom, and the wisdom of God is still available. Now, it tells us there has not been a man wise like Solomon since his time or before him. God gave him great wisdom. So obviously, we're not going to be as wise as Solomon, but can we benefit from wisdom as well? No, the writing of Proverbs tells us of some of the blessings of wisdom. Ecclesiastes tells us some of the blessings of wisdom. The Psalms tell us the blessing of wisdom. That wisdom blesses us. Wisdom blesses us on how to solve problems. You know, there's wisdom that blesses us to avoid problems. When I was in college, when I was in college and I was working at a local restaurant, we were closing up, and some of the workers that had got off earlier came back, and they had left work and they were drinking, and they came back and they were rowdy and drunk. And one of the guys puts his arm around me, and you just smell. You could tell what alcohol he had drank because it was still that thick on him. And he goes, "You Baptist boys will never know what I'm feeling." And I said, "Well, what are you feeling?" He goes, "I feel no pain." And I said, "Well, actually, yeah, I'm going to feel that." He goes, "You're going to drink of the forbidden fruit." And I said, "No, the Bible tells me that in heaven, that God will wipe away every tear. There will be no more pain. There will be no more sorrow. And I will feel no pain, but in the right way. But you're right. I will not feel what you're going to feel tomorrow morning." Oh. Well, where did that come from? Wisdom. God's word gives us wisdom. Wine is a mocker. Strong drink is a brawler. They are bad for you. They are dangerous. Oh, well, then I think I want to avoid them. People say, "Well, so you're teetotaler or whatever. You think you're better than other people." No, I think that living by wisdom blesses me. And it's not just about alcohol. The Bible talks to us about anger. The Bible talks to us about food. The Bible talks to us about money. The Bible talks to us about a great many things. And there are blessings that come when we follow God's wisdom. There are blessings, and the demonstration of wisdom in our lives is a blessing that God gives. When people look at our lives and go, "Wow, that was pretty smart of you to do it that way." Like, "Well, I'm just following God's word." Well, that's pretty good. And Solomon was doing the same thing. He was demonstrating God's wisdom that God had given him. A great demonstration of wisdom in Solomon's kingdom, and a great demonstration of God's provision. Now, when we look at the provision and all of the wealth that Solomon had, we're not saying, "Aha, if you follow God, he's going to make you rich." Because the Bible clearly tells us in the New Testament that wealth, money, is a little blessing. And if we're faithful with the little things, God will entrust to us greater riches. And by greater riches, he's not talking about gold and silver, but there are blessings better than money. And the Bible teaches us that. So when we look at the great provision of Solomon and we see all of the wealth that he has, when we read about the peacocks, just understand that one of the blessings that are available when we follow God is his faithfulness to us. His faithfulness to us and to providing for our needs. His faithfulness to his people. And so here we see all the places where his blessings came from. Verse 9, the Queen of Sheba gave to the king 120 talents of gold, or somewhere around 7 to 800 pounds of gold. 7 to 8,000 pounds of gold. And of spices, great abundance, and precious stones. Neither was there any such spice as the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. And say spices. So King Solomon ate well, but remember, spice trade and what we're done with spices, this was a valuable gift that was brought in. So she has blessings from the Queen of Sheba. We have blessings from Huram. The servants also of Huram and the servants of Solomon, which brought gold from Ophir, that's where the good gold was from, brought algum trees and precious stones, and the king made of the algum trees terraces to the house of the Lord, and to the king's palace, and harps and psalteries for singers, and there were none such seen before in the land of Judah. Now his father David played a harp, but there were better harps in Judah now from these algum trees that Huram brought in to Solomon. So blessings from the Queen of Sheba, blessings from Huram. The abundance of the blessings tell us, verse 13, now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents, or 666 talents of gold, a talent being 60 to 70 pounds. Besides that, which the chapmen and merchants brought, like, wait, so it wasn't just 666 talents of gold? No, that was what brought in, besides what the merchants brought in from their lucrative trade with all of the ships that Huram had provided to Solomon and his administration, his government. And all the kings of Arabia and governors of the country brought gold and silver to Solomon, because it was flowing in left and right from all sources. Abundant blessings, great wealth on display. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of beaten gold went to one target. And 300 shields made he of beaten gold. 300 shekels of gold went into one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Now we've got these shields and targets of gold that Solomon made, and he put in the house in Lebanon and in the house of the Lord. And it tells us 600 shekels of gold went into one target, 300 shekels of gold went into a shield. Like, wait, we had talents before, and now we have shekels. What's the conversion? 3,000 shekels to a talent. So if a target takes 600 shekels of gold, and there's 3,000 shekels in a talent, you can make 5 targets with 1 talent. And you get 666 talents of gold coming in a year. And he made 200 targets. That only used up 40 talents of 1 year's worth of gold. Of the shields, they took 300 shekels of gold, meaning you could make 10 shields out of a talent of gold. And he made 300 shields that took 30 talents of gold. So all of these targets and shields only took up 70 of the talents of gold brought in 1 year. And this was great wealth that was on display there in the house of God and in the forest of the house in the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, verse 17, the king made a great throne of ivory. Now, we're not talking ivory from endangered species back at this point, because they weren't endangered. Although after Solomon made a throne out of ivory, maybe they were an endangered species by that point, and overlaid it with pure gold. Now that's just showing off. The throne is made of ivory and it's overlaid with gold. If you're going to overlay it with gold, what does it matter what it is underneath? Now, I understand different materials have different strengths, but I really don't think the strength of ivory is more than the strength that they could have got from any wood that they could have built it out of as well. He made it out of ivory and then covered up the ivory so that you can't see it. That's just the great display of wealth. It's wealth that you can't even see, that's behind the scenes and underneath the gold. Verse 18 says there were 6 steps to the throne with a footstool of gold, which were fastened to the throne, and stays on each side of the sitting place, and 2 lions standing by the stays, and 12 lions stood there on the one side, and on the other side upon the 6 steps. And there was not the like made in any kingdom. This is his throne. And there's 12 lions, and it's ivory overlaid with gold, and there's 6 steps leading up to it. And it is the throniest throne that there was. There was no other throne like it. I mean, throniest, that's not really an adjective. That's not really an adjective, but it was the most throne-like throne there's ever been. And why? Why not? And it's going to tell us about the great wealth that's on display. Verse 20 tells us, all of the drinking vessels of King Solomon were of gold, and all of the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. None were of silver. It was not anything to be accounted of in the days of Solomon. None were of silver, none were of brass, no wooden goblets in Solomon's house. They were all of gold. He didn't drink out of anything not made of gold, because silver wasn't accounted as anything. The amount of wealth on display, what's it picturing for us? God's faithfulness to his promises, God's provision for his people, and this abundant blessings. There were blessings from trade. Verse 21. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Huram. Every 3 years, once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold, silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. Now, I don't know that you would ever account apes being imported as a symbol of wealth. Peacocks? Maybe. The neighbor up the road here had peacocks, didn't he? Yeah. Don't know that that's a symbol of great wealth. But apes and peacocks, what's the big deal? Well, they're not native to Israel, and he imported them. And so there were apes and peacocks. I don't know what they did with the apes. I don't know if they were just on display, if they entertained Solomon, if they sent them to work. Doesn't tell us. But it's obvious that these ships of Tarshish bringing gold, silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks are an expression of the wealth and the blessings that Solomon got from trade. There was nothing in the world that wasn't available to him. Almost like he had Amazon before there was Amazon. There were blessings from kings. Verse 22 says, and King Solomon passed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom, and all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom that God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold and raiment, harness and spices and horses and mules, a rate year by year. They all sought Solomon's wisdom, and they kept bringing him wealth to be able to hear his wisdom. Had blessings from the kings. And it talks about his great reign. Verse 25, Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots and 12,000 horsemen whom he bestowed in the chariot cities. The chariot cities, the cities where you store your chariots. And he reigned over all the kings from the river even unto the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. And the king made silver in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar trees made he as sycamore trees that are in the low plains in abundance. And they brought unto Solomon horses out of Egypt and out of all the lands. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, they're written elsewhere, and you can read about all his failures elsewhere. But Ezra is sharing the blessings to let the people know as they're coming back in the land after captivity that God's blessings are still available. God's blessings of wisdom, God's faithfulness, and his provision for his people. Now, I don't expect anyone to bring their pet peacock on Sunday to church. And certainly, if you get yourself a hold of an ape, leave it at home. Probably not the best thing to bring in here. You can see the apes at the zoo, and their behavior is not normally the best. But all of these things for us are a picture of God's faithfulness. God promised that he would bless his people beyond measure. Solomon honored God. He had a respect for the holy. He expanded God's reign, and God blessed him with wisdom and with his faithfulness and his provision. God's blessings are still available. If they were still available to Israel after 70 years in captivity, and we can look back and say, well, we can see God's blessings in church history. We can see God's blessing in the early church. Ezra was reminding the people God's blessings are still available, and God's blessings are still available today. Not big piles of gold and peacocks, but God's faithfulness and God's wisdom are still available. Well, we'll take our prayer time offline tonight.